Greetings and welcome to Starcast from Planet Waves. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, the host of Planet Waves FM, author of the Planet Waves horoscope and a few other things, and I am here a day early. We are running the Planet Waves publication, the Thursday publication, a day early to accommodate the most unusual Scorpio new moon that takes place just ahead of 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's 1:47 in the morning Eastern Standard Time, so it'll be early morning in England and in Europe, and a little bit later the previous night in California, and I can't do the translations into Australian and New Zealand time in my head. I guess I could. Anyway, you guys can figure it out. You're probably doing this all the time. In any event, thank you for joining me today. This edition accompanies the article about the new moon and the weekly horoscope. So this is a really wild new moon, and it takes place in the next to last degree of Scorpio, which is one of those intensely transitional areas. The last 2 degrees of any sign connote movement and transition, and what you might think of as a point of no return. And what's happening at the same time as the new moon, which is the moon passing between the sun and the earth, is that Mercury is passing between the sun and the earth. So they're going to pass between the sun and the earth at exactly the same time. I don't remember ever seeing this before. I'm sure it's happened. Maybe it's happened. A lot of new moons have gone by under the bridge in the 30 years that I have been reading charts publicly. However, I don't remember one, and it's pretty wild, and it's important now because there's so much going on in the world that is just so scorpionic. There's so much that is coming out of this Scorpio realm right now. For example, all of this sex for money and trafficking people that has completely dominated the news in the United States, or largely dominated the news in the United States, certainly for the past couple of weeks and on and off for quite a while. This is not a new issue. What is new and what is potentially interesting is that, as I have said many times, I'm not a predictive astrologer. There are astrologers who like to think that they are. I don't think that astrology's got a very good track record of predicting anything, and besides, everything's happening all at once now. But I did say back in September that on the morning of 11/12, possibly on 11/11, I called it 11/11 because it's catchier, but I said, well, this could also be something at around 10 o'clock in the morning on the 12th. There's going to be some shakeup in the White House. And remarkably, I was within an hour. I woke up, I was on the New York Times front page at 9:16, just, 44 minutes ahead of 10 o'clock, and there was this new development in this ongoing scandal of Trump's involvement in the business and the life and the island and the townhouse and the trafficking and the money of Jeffrey Epstein. And personally, I think that there should be absolutely no connection between the President of the United States and a convicted pedophile sex trafficker whose business partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, is serving not such hard time in federal prison. But Trump's name is all over these files. And what happened on whatever morning the 12th was, that the Democratic caucus in Congress released 3 emails, and then the Republican caucus later in the day released 20,000 emails that they were sitting on, 20,000 emails. And this has created a cascade effect that led to the House and the Senate passing laws. The Senate still, I think, has yet to take a formal vote. That's probably going to take place right around the time I'm speaking to you. And this is going to get sent to Trump's desk today for the signing of this Epstein transparency bill. Now, I normally would not think much about this. I would not think, well, this is just one more this is just one more load of bullshit we're being given, one more distraction. However, the fact that I saw this coming in the charts at the time of the inauguration, that's when I saw this 11, 11, 11, 12 thing, was the first time I looked at the inauguration chart with the sun so close to Pluto. And it was clear they were going to move fast on turning the United States into an autocratic, plutocratic government, concentrating power. That's the sun applying in a conjunction to Pluto in the inauguration chart, for when this 47th presidency began. And, that day they rented a little stadium and were signing all these executive orders, and, Trump was letting us know the boss was back in town and all this stuff. And that fit Sun Pluto, and many other things fit Sun, 10th house, Sun Pluto in the 10th house, in the house of the coronation of the new king. And then when that conjunction aligned using a technique called secondary progression, which is a scaled model of time, 1/365th model of time, which works in personal charts and all kinds. It's a wonderful method that very few people use these days because it's kind of old and dusty and not well understood, but it works. And so suddenly this thing was not only back in the news, but it seemed on within an hour of when I had said that something would be. This is cascaded. And I don't want to get too deep into my read on the nature of this whole thing, but it is, let's just say, sticking to astrology, it is very scorpionic in that it involves commerce and sex and death and power and lots of money and all kinds of secrets. There's nothing not scorpionic about this. And so suddenly it is coming to a head at the time of this very odd Scorpio new moon conjunct retrograde Mercury, which is aligned with numerous other planets. So I've done the article about this. I know this is very hard for people who are not astrologers to listen to or to make sense of, but I suggest you listen to me describe it like you're listening to music. And don't think that you're not capable of understanding this. I do my best to break it down. I do my best to ground the symbols in reality. And the truth is I'm using very straightforward methods, particularly in this branch of what I'm doing, very straightforward approaches to, looking at a set of symbols and a pattern and saying, well, this is how this describes our moment. And so what I've done is I have cast, and it'll be connected to this article pretty much wherever it appears, except on the podcasting platforms out of Buzzsprout, but I will add that link as soon as I can, so you can see what I'm talking about here. But I'm circulating this with a little table of planets that are all exactly aligned with this new moon. And by exactly aligned, I mean that everything I'm listing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the points are at 28 and change degrees of the fixed signs, exactly lined up with the new moon. That includes the moon, sun, and Mercury. And the last two are just 1 degree out. So I'm aiming this crosshairs very tightly at the new moon. That's how you do it. You cannot, it is poor discipline to start just randomly adding minor planets that are 5 degrees out or 3 degrees out, because you have no way to construct coherent sentences with that. And it brings in dozens more points. So my approach is to start with a very narrow fixation and then work out. But you don't even need to work outward. Just look at what's going on here. So straight away, we know we've got a radical chart, meaning it gets to the root of the matter, because just with Sun, Moon, Scorpio, and the Earth aligned in this alignment, we've got all the elements we need. We've got this Mercury retrograde thing of secrets that are being now going to be exposed to the sun. It's going on in Scorpio. That's your sex, death, money, power, control issues. We've got the commercial issues with Mercury and Scorpio, and we've got this whole thing going on in the anaretic degrees. Degrees 29 and 30, the last two degrees, are these degrees that describe the point of no return. So when you're studying your own chart and you see that you've got things with a 28 or a 29 next to them, which represent the 29th and 30th degrees respectively, consider that planet as describing some kind of a point of no return. I have my Saturn in degree 29 of Aquarius. This new moon is square my Saturn, so I'm paying close attention to it from a personal standpoint, and I happen to like Saturn quite a bit, and I think that if you want to get anything done, you need to be friends with Saturn. And I would say if you have an astrologer who's not friends with Saturn, you better ask them why, because I think one of the basic qualifications of doing astrology professionally is you are good at Saturn. In any event, let's look at this cross at 29, that is the next to last degree of the fixed signs. So we've got Sun, Moon, and Mercury. But then we've got Deucalion, which is a Greek, it's a slow mover. I'll tell you when these are asteroids and when they're not. Deucalion is a very slow mover, and that's about the flood, the great flood. Deucalion was the Noah of Greek mythology, and the myths are very similar. It's suspicious. The whole thing seems to have been coming from the same place. And there's lots and lots of flood myths from Atlantis, Lemuria, and so forth and so on. Humanity's full of flood mythology and floods. Nothing new, nothing special, but here we are. So it's Sun, Moon, Mercury conjunct Deucalion. Then it's also conjunct, so there's a flood involved, and it's conjunct Typhon. All of this is in the degree of the new moon. Typhon, the namesake of typhoons, but the etymology is very complicated. Typhon seems to come out of several different languages. The modern word we associate with is typhoon, but Typhon was a monster, the craziest monster of Greek mythology. Multiple-headed and legs like serpents, and it's like something out of the imagination of Trey Parker on South Park, who comes up with these fantasy monsters. But this actually all comes out of ancient myth, and Zeus did battle with Typhon, and that established himself as the king of the gods. So Typhon, there's a monster in the mix, and there's a big flood and a storm in the mix, and then all of this is in Scorpio, right in the degree of the new moon. Then there's Ziwana, which is a natural forces type of element. It's lunar. Ziwana it's very much like the goddess of the hunt, Selene or Diana, protectress of young girls, depicted with a bow and arrow and followed around by a fox. So that too is exactly in the conjunction of the new moon. It is crazy. So the points in the conjunction in the same degree, that is 1/360th of the wheel, slightly more than the width of the full moon, is Sun, Moon, Mercury, Deucalion, Ziwana, and Typhon. Okay. Now, here's the punchline. It's not so funny for the survivors, but it's the punchline for this. Exactly square the new moon is a conjunction of Damocles and Persephone. Damocles, a weird planet that spends 30 years in Aquarius, of which it's now at the very end, 30 years in Aquarius, the entire age of the public internet, it's spent in Aquarius. And then it spends 10 years in the other 11 signs. So it takes 30 years to go through Aquarius, and it whips through, it's real close to the Earth, and it whips through the other 11 signs in just 10 years, 4 of which it spends in Pisces. that's where it's going to be real soon. And this is about the sword of Damocles hanging over the head of the tyrant. The tyrant was either, I'll think of his name, but it's in like the Greek Sicily side of mythology. And I think it was Dionysus the First or the Second, a real douchey guy. And the story is that his servant, his courtesan, his like ass-kissing slave advisor, named Damocles, said, "Wow, it must be great being king. You guys, you can eat anything you want, and you can do anything you want." And so the king said, "Let's switch places for a day." And when Damocles is sitting in the throne, he realizes that there's this huge sword hanging over his head, suspended by a single strand of horsehair. That at any moment that horsehair could snap and essentially split his skull open and he would be instantaneously dead. This represents the peril of great power, the peril of leadership, and the constant sense of doom. In a sense, we are all living with the sword of Damocles seeming to hang over our heads now, which is very challenging. And it is a thing that previously only affected the powerful and the influential and the wealthy, who are constantly encroached upon. But now, in a sense, we've all been thrust into the public sphere, and we've all had the cares and worries of the world laid on our shoulders, buzzing on the phones every five minutes as people's feeds go off, and we find out that somebody got stabbed in London. Well, why? Really, truly, why should you know that? Unless you're running a London bureau of something, part of the London police, like Scotland Yard, like what? You got friends in London? Even if you got friends in London, why do we need to know this? But we're pelted with this and millions of things like it all day long. This is all very Damoclean. It is all very sort of Damocles, but so too is this sense of inescapable, unavoidable doom, the sense that the world is about to end, which is, as I get into in my article, being driven by the fact that there are people whose religious fervor is based on the world ending. All of the Abrahamic religions which run the Western world, this is to say, the Jews, the Christians, and the Islamics, are all about the end of the world. And they are into this. They are into it. You are listening to an astrology podcast. The chances that you believe or follow or think about any of this stuff much are fairly slim. But I'm here to remind you the extent to which people in positions of power and much of their grassroots base and many financial influencers are obsessed with doomsday, with the end. They are certain we are in the end times, and we must be prepping. And this is part of the obsession with wealth and numerous other obsessions, and also the obsession with like doing everything you want before the end comes. And I don't know what people's individual relationship to quote unquote the judgment is. I heard Trump recently said that he doesn't think he's going to heaven. Yeah. So I think there are a lot of people, and he's like this newly never baptized born again Christian, politically expedient Christian, not a freaking Christian, what a joke. But in the sense of the most corrupt inflection of the concept in the term, yeah. It seems like the Christian emperor decreeing that Christianity is the official religion of the empire. This is a load of shite. The United States is not a Christian nation any more than it's a Jewish nation or an Islamic nation. It is a secular nation, and always remember the words in the Constitution, not the Bill of Rights. In the Constitution, I'm going to say that again, not the Bill of Rights. When anyone says we live in a Christian nation, no. The Constitution says there shall be no religious test for taking public office. The founders were dominionists. They were not Christians. A whole other thing. So this rise of state-sponsored national Christianity has nothing to do with reality. It is merely a political move, a political opportunity. They are doomsdayers. They are end-timers, and they think it's their job to help bring on the end of the world. And these are people in very high positions of power and influence in finance and politics, and they control the oil, and they control the money, and they are planning for doomsday. They should try having a good orgasm every now and then. Seems to be this ever elusive thing. If you need 12-year-old girls to have something even vaguely, 25 is not young enough. I don't know what's going on in these people's minds, except that I think that they're bored. They have too much money, too much power, too much time on their hands, and they're not very creative. And these are the people in charge. And these are the people who are now suddenly experiencing this kind of intense thing with God knows how many boxes, reams, terabytes of files from the original Epstein investigation, circa 2003, 4, 5, the original FBI investigation, about to suddenly be made public. We're going to find out all of this stuff. And I realize it's like every 2 weeks, it's like the Epstein files have come out. The Epstein files have come out. Nothing new. It's always the third paragraph. And by the way, there's nothing new here. Well, I don't know. I am not deferring to the standard maneuvers of politics. I am deferring to the astrology, and I'm seeing that if I nail this issue start like suddenly picking up momentum within 45 minutes, that there's something in the astrology. And the something in the astrology right now is that this could be very big and it could move very fast. Why do I say that? Well, once again, I have buried the lead. That's the problem with doing radio. When you're writing and you bury the lead down in the 5th paragraph or the 10th paragraph, you can always just move it up and smooth it out. No, not so much. But let's see. We're getting it to the point at the end here. This new moon conjunct Mercury, Deucalion, Ziwana, Typhon, and Typhon is opposite the planet Uranus, the planet of revolutions, revolts, upheavals, and surprises, and also things moving very quickly. So this alignment of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different points, including Sun, Moon, and Mercury. And the Earth is right there. The Earth currently right now is lined with the constellation Taurus, and square Damocles and Persephone. Did I talk about Persephone? Persephone has all the markings of child trafficking. Essentially, Persephone is a story of someone who got kind of trapped in the underworld by eating pomegranate seeds offered to her by Hades. With Damocles, this is the crazy thing. Again, I got sidetracked. Damocles is conjunct Persephone. The nature of the sword of Damocles is that it is colored by, modified by, described by a thing about kidnapping young women. Now, people are going to have different interpretations of Demeter and Persephone, but Persephone ends up in the underworld. She ends up on kind of Epstein Island, in hell, basically. Well, that's certainly descriptive. And Damocles and Persephone are coming from Aquarius. And then all of these points line up with Uranus. Uranus is the surprise, the development, the revolution, it's misnamed. It should be Prometheus. Uranus is the overthrown, not the overthrower. Prometheus was an independent actor, along with Athena. And Uranus is in the last degree of Taurus, at the very end of its run through Taurus, retrograde. This whole chart could go off like with one giant, imagine the sound of a million mousetraps going off. The sound of a million mousetraps. I'll see if I can get the friendly neighborhood AI to emulate the sound of a million mousetraps going off. So, we shall see what we shall see. And I will repeat again that I believe the Epstein scandal we are being told about is in itself the cover-up for a much, much deeper situation. This is the scrim. This is the kind of false floor. But I believe that there may be sufficient information to create some real movement. I will have more on Friday nights, Planet Waves FM. I may have a second podcast on Thursday after the new moon, but in any case, signing off from the Harshaw House in Greene County, New York. Lots of love, and bye for now.